I'm Caroline Hyde. This is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, Apple's sales are at an all-time high. We'll crunch the best ever revenue quarter for the tech giant. Plus, Slack sends a message to the competition. The CEO breaks down its most ambitious move yet in a Bloomberg exclusive interview. And tech's rebellion against the travel ban will break down a potential Silicon Valley plan in the pipeline to challenge the administration in court. First, to our lead. Apple shares popping in after-hours trading. You look at the Bloomberg, you can check up just 2 percentage points higher, reporting its first quarter revenue of just under $78.5 billion. Now, that's 3% year over year. Also encouraging investors, it's a beat on iPhone unit sales. Now, Apple sold over 78 million units in the quarter due to strong demand for the iPhone 7 Plus in particular. And its services business, well, that includes iTunes, Apple Pay, for example, saw 18% revenue growth year over year. Joining us to dig into the numbers, Julie Ask. She is Principal Analyst with Forrester Research. Julie, great to have you here. And
thank you.
The numbers are pretty stellar. Earnings per share actually rising rather than falling as many analysts expected. And the CFO was telling me on a call, it really does seem to be about the iPhone 7 Plus and a skew towards that higher priced phone.
You know, absolutely. iPhone sales make up the majority of Apple's revenue at this time. And while, we look at global smartphone subscribers, that number is going to grow about 50% over the next 5 years. So that's a big number. But as we all know, Apple makes a lot of money selling phones, unlike some of their competitors. And so if we look at the market that they're pursuing, which is more the middle class and upper class, right, that growth curve isn't going to be as high. So when you take all of that into account, it's doubly impressive, the numbers that they've posted for 2016.
I was speaking to Luca Maestri, who's the CFO, and what also really was coming across was they're doubling down on the services area in particular. They say they're going to double the size of this particular unit, which on a standalone basis is as big as a Fortune 100 company. They say they're going to be doubling that over the next 4 years. How much do you think services is the right bet for Apple?
I think it's absolutely the right bet. Certainly until they start selling other home appliances like refrigerators or cars, there's only so many smartphones, Apple TVs, and smartwatches you can sell. And there's a lot of upside in the services business, not only on the media side, but I think there's also some areas like Apple Pay where there's relatively low consumer adoption today of only 11% in the US, but there's a lot of upside in the services market on that side.
Now, it's interesting when you're looking at the other products that they sell. There was a slight slowdown there. The CFO trying to say, look, this is iPods, which we include in that. The Apple TV, which was a new product this time last year, that's going to be a hard comp. But do they need another product? The watch actually starts to be looking like it's selling relatively well, a record quarter for it.
I don't know that they need another product. We also expect to see, if we look at the adoption of smartwatches today, while they're only a fraction of total wearable sales today, they're going to be as large, about 40% of wearable sales within about 5 years. So there's a lot of upside in that market as well, as we move from about 18% of US online adults owning a wearable device today to 29% in just 4 years.
I think what also struck me was the lack of a mention of China this time round, particularly from the CFO. He said Brazil's going really well, Turkey's going really well. China does seem to be a slowdown area. Are they right to be focusing so much on China or switching attention to India a little bit more?
So I go back to the point is Apple makes a lot of money selling phones. They're profitable and they want to sell phones profitably. And you have to look at the markets where there's the most upside. In a market like China that's very crowded with low-cost Android producers, that's a tougher market for them. But I think they've done well, so far. But not where their biggest growth will probably come from.
And would India be the right sort of country, given that, the average earnings power in India is less than China? Do they have as much of an opportunity in that country, do you think?
So I think there's almost more of an opportunity in India. If we look at the growth in smartphone adoption in China, that'll grow by about 50% over the next 5 years. But in India, that will almost double. And if you look at each of these markets of about 1 billion people, the middle class and the upper class are still very, very large markets, even bigger than the United States in each of these markets. A lot of upside.
A lot of upside, Julie. I'm glad to say we're going to have more upside from you because you're sticking with us. Julie Ask, she's Principal Analyst with Forrester Research, will be joining us a little bit later in the hour, and we're going to be sticking on Apple, our top story, of course, throughout the show. Back to another story that continues, though, to spark controversy. Donald Trump's travel ban. Tech titans, well, they're continuing to react. Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos says, well, his company is working hand in hand with state officials on legal options against President Trump's executive order. And on top of that, well, Reuters reporting a group of of tech companies planning to meet to discuss filing legal documents in support of a lawsuit challenging the immigration ban. Among the companies invited to the meeting, Airbnb, Netflix and Google. Joining us now is Bloomberg's Mark Bergen, who is covering Google all across this story for us. And will Google respond? Are we likely to see a concerted, joined-up approach coming from the tech giants?
I think so. This issue's really touched a nerve here in Silicon Valley, and it's likely that they're going to work together. There's some probably risk for one company to stick its neck out and take a legal action without the others. This is certainly the Trump administration has been seen as to be kind of retaliatory against companies, and they're also trying to work with him on other issues like taxes and trade and antitrust.
You've actually just been really showing, you say it touched a nerve. You were reporting on how much it's touched a nerve for your own company that you cover, Google, and in fact they were demonstrating all of yesterday as well.
Right, there were over 2,000 employees that came out. It was kind of surprising. They walked out of their offices across 8 different offices around the country and the world. This big demonstration. You had Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google, that spoke in support, and Sergey Brin, who's one of the co-founders, who shared his story. He came here when he was young as a refugee from Russia. And it's certainly, like, I've talked to a lot of people at Google that are pretty inspired by what Sergey has done, and he was at the protest at the San Francisco airport on Saturday as well.
I mean, that was, pretty standout to have such an executive there at the protests. And what about, this isn't the only potential executive order that they're going to be pushing up against. There's going to be the one, we're expecting a move on visas, particularly HB1 visas that are crucial to some of the tech giants. What are the other policies you think could see tech giants work together on?
Right, there's a proposal now about potentially visas affecting immigrants, founders, and startups. There's one about H-1B, which is kind of hiring from overseas. I think the bigger issue here is that a lot of people in DC for these tech companies and here are really unclear about what the administration is going to do on a number of policies. And so right now they're sort of really on their toes and anticipating the next move.
Mark Bergen, absolutely great to have you on. All the analysis, I know you'll be covering it from a Google perspective. Thank you. Now, the new Republican head of the Federal Communications Commission that declined to say whether the agency will enforce the net neutrality rule put in place by Democrats. This is the rule that bars internet service providers from slowing or blocking traffic. New chairman Ajit Pai said the FCC moved towards granting relief to some smaller providers from aspects of the rule, but beyond that, he wouldn't comment. We do know that Pai is a long-time critic of the rule and dissented in the original vote in 2015. Coming up, an exclusive conversation with Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield, how he plans to fend off larger rivals Microsoft and Facebook, and what he thinks of Trump's travel ban. And all throughout the hour, we'll continue to follow the Apple earnings call underway right now. Shares, as you'll see, remaining up 2.5%, trading on an all-time revenue record for the iPhone with more than 78 million sold. And a reminder that terminal users can follow along the Top Live blog for instant highlights and analysis at TLiveGo. This is Bloomberg. Now, Slack is taking aim at the corporate sector. The startup is launching Enterprise Grid, a new product aimed at corporations and other large enterprises. The new Slack platform adds feature changes and administrative controls that the company hopes will make Slack easier to use at large scale. This, though, as competition from corporate software heavyweights like Microsoft and Facebook, well, it continues to ramp up. Very pleased to say, joining us now for an exclusive interview is Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield. Stuart, I hear the event, the launch was brilliant today. What exactly are you hoping to achieve with this new platform? Already being used at IBM, how does it change working practices?
Well, Slack has been around for a few years now, and we work really well with teams. And a team can be 10 people, it can be 200 people, it can be 50 people. But once you get into the thousands, people are only metaphorically one team. You get over 10,000 people, and what you have instead is this interconnected tapestry. It's teams of teams, and they're overlapping, they're interconnected. So Grid is a new product for administrators to create a structure out of Slack that mirrors the actual shape of their organization.
You say it's not an incremental change, it's a fresh approach. How will you ensure that the CIOs, the tech heads of businesses, will adopt this fresh approach? Because almost Slack has got into companies by stealth to a certain extent before this.
It has very much. But it's interesting because a lot of the product decisions we made were shaped by conversations we had with CIOs at some of the biggest companies in the world. In fact, at our launch event today, we had Jeff Smith, the CIO of IBM, on stage talking about a phrase that he used once, which has stuck with me, which is operationalizing culture, and using Slack as this vehicle to establish or create the kind of cultural change that executives want to see at their companies. And one often thinks of the CIO as someone who's in a supporting role, enabling technology for the organization. Jeff was a great example to me of someone who is opinionated, who has a point of view, who has a mission to drive agility across a 480,000 person company. And we have talked to dozens of people, heads of IT, CIOs, other executives, managers, literally thousands of individual end users in shaping this product.
Competition is fierce, and actually a lot of startups are also focusing on the opportunity of enterprise. We just had an event here in San Francisco from Dropbox. Is it Microsoft? Is it Google who are the big challenge? Is it the startups, or are you collaborative?
Well, we definitely try to take a collaborative approach. So we regard ourselves as having very few direct competitors. One of the background trends that's happened, say, over the last 20 years or so is that the number of software product categories has proliferated like crazy. So you have specialty software for recruiting and for legal, for finance, for IT, for marketing, for sales, and it goes on and on and on, and there keeps on being more and more of it. So we're never going to be able to compete and create products that work in all of those functions. Instead, we see ourselves as providing kind of a connective tissue layer throughout the organization, and whatever products our customers already use, we want to make their experience of those products better. So if they use Dropbox, we want to make their experience of Dropbox better. On the other hand, if they use Box, we want to make their experience of using Box better.
You say collaborative. What's your vision for Slack? Is it eventually to be bought by a Microsoft? Would that be an obvious route? Would it be to stay independent, to IPO? What do you see?
Well, I can tell you this. Myself and the 3 other co-founders of the company were all part of the original team that made Flickr, and we were acquired by Yahoo and then started this after we left. So we've had that experience once. We're clever and we work hard. However, we also had incredible timing and just brought this product to market at a moment when the world really wanted it and the capital markets were looking for something like us. So if we ever wanted to see how far we could take something, this is the shot. We're never going to have this kind of opportunity again, so I would like to see how far we can take it.
I'm sure the rest of the market would like to see how far you can take it too. Full disclosure, of course, Bloomberg Beta, the venture capital arm of Bloomberg LP, is an investor in Slack. And Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield staying right with me. We have to get your take on a top story in tech this week. Of course, President Trump's immigration order, that's still ahead. And the Apple earnings call, well, it's still underway. We're all across it for you. CEO Tim Cook said just moments ago that the company's services business, which covers, of course, iTunes, Apple Pay, will be the service of a Fortune 100 business in 2017, the size of a Fortune 100 business. Here he is with more. This is Bloomberg.
It was our best quarter ever for services, with almost $7.2 billion in revenue. App Store customers broke all-time records during the holiday quarter, including $3 billion in purchases in December alone, making it the App Store's single best month ever.
A story we're watching. Sprint shares popping as much as 5% in trading today. The wireless carrier added more mobile subscribers than expected in the fourth quarter. Sales also beat estimates thanks to half-price promotions and unlimited data offers. Sprint's the 4th largest wireless carrier in the US. It's now completed 2 full years of subscriber growth. Now, President Trump's travel ban has been fueling outrage across the tech sector, with top executives from Amazon to Uber all condemning the action and vowing to support immigrant employees. Slack CEO Stuart Butterfield is one of them, tweeting, "Immigration is unambiguously an economic benefit, but doesn't matter, do the right thing, because it's right over the weekend." He said this. So Stuart is back with us. This is a passionate perspective of yours, because you yourself come from Polish heritage. What does it mean not only for you as an individual, but also for Slack as a company?
Well, let's start with the company. I think it is, it's a disruption for us. It's something that could in the long term have some, at the margin, impact on our ability to hire. But right now, today, we have employees who are affected by this, and we have some who are potentially affected in this, and we can't really tell yet because there's a lot of ambiguity. So we're taking care of that. But to me, this isn't really a business issue. And I also want to make sure that I'm clear that while this is a problem and potentially a problem for technology companies in particular, it's in the background of a whole bunch of other changes. I mean, we were on the verge as a country of being able to have a real conversation about criminal justice reform. I think we're going to look back 25 years from now at this as a critical moment in climate change, and we're now doing nothing. So there's a whole bunch of other issues that I think are in the background very much as we talk about this one issue of immigration reform. Of course, it's not immigration reform, the travel ban. And the thing that I'm not sure that people understand is this is not going to make us any safer. This is going to make people angrier. And the people who are refugees are just by definition, they're running. And they're often running for their lives.
I mean, in fact, you flew into San Francisco. I watched your video you'd posted on Twitter when the demonstrations were actually happening. This could run and run because it's not only an issue at the moment of a travel ban, but what also could hit, if we take it back to business, as sometimes unsavory as that is, there's the H-1B visa as well that could be looked at. How worried are you about the talent pool that's here at the moment?
Well, this company was founded by myself, and I'm a dual American-Canadian citizen, one Brit, one Canadian who was born in Russia is a Russian citizen, another American, and since then we've hired people from all over the world, from China, from India, from Pakistan, from the UK, from France, from Germany, from Italy, and a lot of those people come in on H-1B visas, they come in on L-1 visas, they come in a lot of visa programs that are threatened. Absolutely understand the concerns of people who feel like this has the potential to displace American workers, but certainly in the technology industry, it is not. I mean, these are people who are very well compensated, and we're bringing them into the country to improve the overall talent pool of the country and innovate at a level that would have been very difficult otherwise.
We're starting to see, we were talking about collaboration earlier, we're starting to see collaboration from tech companies actually looking to fight this in the courts. Jeff Bezos looking to work with Amazon, with GitHub, other companies being invited. Is this something you'd look to lend Slack support to?
Yeah, absolutely. And also, many of us as individuals are involved. So this is, in the short term, not an issue that's going to have a material impact on our business. However, it is something that is a harbinger for more changes that could be even more disruptive and more threatening.
Can you name other policies that you're most concerned about?
Well, we also have, we're headquartered in San Francisco. We have a very diverse employee base. LGBT rights, something that I think we've made significant progress on over the last 10 years or so. Not all the way there yet, but I think those are very much under threat. I mean, I think the whole, it feels sometimes as a human being that like the last couple of centuries of progress that we've made as a civilization, as a species, are somewhat under threat because of the level of uncertainty. And it's not even, I mean, it's not like we're trading that for some business benefit. I think Trump is the most anti-business president we've ever had, not just because of this stuff, but because of the degree of uncertainty. When you have the executive branch ordering executive employees to ignore orders from a federal court, that undermines the whole system of laws on which this, everything's dependent. If you don't have that kind of certainty that the laws are going to be carried through, it's difficult to establish contracts. And then you have him also saying import duties on American companies who manufacture outside of the U.S. It's preposterous because those duties wouldn't then apply to a foreign company who is manufacturing outside the U.S., and that's never going to happen. But, I mean, it's never going to happen because the Congress would never let it happen. But the fact that you have the president saying these things, which are obviously impractical at best and impossible most of the time, is just a level of background risk that makes all business decisions difficult.
But then there's sometimes a carrot that comes with a stick of, oh, we'll reduce potentially corporate taxes, will help you repatriate money. That would be a big boon to companies such as Apple. Have you been concerned by the way in which tech giants have been willing to work with the president at the moment, or do we need that sort of dialogue between Washington and Silicon Valley?
It's hard to say, and it's so unclear because I'm not in the room, the degree to which they are working with Trump. I think there's a lot of issues, corporate tax reform, one of those, and the repatriation of overseas earnings that would have happened anyway, or that there would have been some discussion about without all this needless, separation. Because this travel ban is impacting people who have green cards, who have families, who have houses and jobs and their possessions and their bank accounts here. They travel overseas and they want to come home, and they can't. people being asked to relinquish those rights in order to not be detained further at the border. So there's no reason that we had to do that to get corporate tax reform. I mean, that was a conversation that is entirely independent.
Are you optimistic or are you pessimistic about technology?
That's almost the problem. So I am fundamentally an optimist, and I think that the pendulum will swing back the other way. And this is, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Although this is a significant step back. But it's hard to even know whether you should be optimistic or pessimistic because I think the degree of uncertainty is so great.
Stuart, it's been fabulous having you in. Thank you very much for giving of your time on a day where you had such a crucial announcement as well. And we look forward to having you in again, I hope soon. So Stuart Butterfield, of course, CEO of Slack. And a story we're following, President Trump has delayed signing an executive order on cybersecurity. This as White House staff step up attention to legal challenges to other recent order on immigration. Now, according to a person familiar with the matter, the Trump administration has not yet determined when it can reschedule the signing. Trump met with advisors, including former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani, to discuss the issue Tuesday. And as we head to the break, another check on Apple for you as the earnings call continues. CFO Luca Maestri said just moments ago that mainland revenue in China was flat versus a year ago. Apple's also planning a second retail store in Dubai and its first in Singapore. We'll bring you more details next. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Nina Melendez. You're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's begin with your first word news. Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling on President Trump to lift his ban on travelers from 7 predominantly Muslim countries. Guterres says countries have the right to avoid infiltration from terrorist organizations, but not based on discrimination related to religion, ethnicity, or nationality. A French paper says presidential candidate François Fillon employed 2 of his children as legislative aides when he was senator. The paper is expected to report Fillon's 2 children earned $91,000 each, and his wife more than $970,000 as a parliamentary assistant. Fillon has been the establishment's leading candidate in the battle to stop Marine Le Pen's populist campaign. British Prime Minister Theresa May is launching a charm offensive aimed at former communist states in Central and Eastern Europe. She's trying to win allies for Brexit negotiations due to begin in a couple of months. May's ambassadors in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Slovenia, and Slovakia will be given higher status and more staff for lobbying. And Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu plans to bring up renewed sanctions on Iran when he meets with President Trump at the White House. That's after Tehran reportedly conducted a ballistic missile test this week. Russian and EU officials said today the launch was not in violation of a 2015 nuclear pact. Netanyahu visits the U.S. February 15th. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,600 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Nina Melendez. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. Tuesday here in New York, 6:30 Wednesday morning in Hong Kong. I'm joined by Bloomberg's David Ingles with a look at the markets. David, good morning.
Hi, Nina. Yep, lots to talk about in Asia. We are expecting another slow start to the trading session, 3 out of 3 so far this week. That's really been the story. Within markets, I mean, we're looking at currencies. Just looking at the charts, looking at commentary. It's going to be interesting to see whether we see a pullback in currencies after what seems to be a fairly extreme drop in the U.S. dollar the past 2 or 3 days or so. We're seeing a little bit of that at the moment, not a lot though. Looking ahead though, Japan poised for declines again. Not as bad as Tuesday, but we are looking at declines. They're on a stronger Japanese yen. Hong Kong is reopening today. That's also poised to drop, playing a bit of catch-up. We'll be tracking within the equity space. We'll be tracking suppliers or parts makers of the iPhone following the results coming from Apple. That being said, Taiwan, where a lot of these big contract manufacturers of Apple are traded, is close to the as with China, Malaysia, and Vietnam. Now, as far as sort of data points are concerned, it's going to be very busy across Asia. I think just to pick out what's relevant and the sort of big ones, we have China manufacturing PMI that's due out mid-morning. South Korea industrial production, among other things, will be tracking throughout the trading session. I'm David Ingles, more from Bloomberg Technology next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Caroline Hyde. And our top story this hour, of course, is Apple reporting its fiscal first quarter results. Shares continuing to rise in after-hours trading. We're up to more than, well, almost 3 percentage points. Executives on an investor call now with analysts. The company had all-time revenue record with over 78 million units sold. That made up almost 70% of the company's revenue. Also encouraging investors, well, it's the company's revenue growth in its services business and growth outside of the United States. However, Apple did say revenue from mainland China was flat year over year, but that is an improvement from this time last year. I want to bring back Julie Osk, she's principal analyst for Forrester Research. We were talking earlier about China and about how the opportunities there. I mean, they're never going to get a lower price phone, are they? They're never going to go below an SE, or would they?
You know, so they might, but they're still never going to match the prices of some of the manufacturers in China who are also just more willing to give away or sell products at below cost to gain that market share. You know, Apple has a business model of selling hardware and profiting from those sales. You know, other device manufacturers may be thinking about ad revenue, more services revenue, but not everybody has the same business model.
And so the business model, it seems to me, is get the users and then make more money from each and individual user. This is why they're bigging up the services area. And is the ecosystem able to keep on luring people in when you've got the rivals of Google Home or if you've got Amazon's Alexa? How do they compete to keep you so intoxicated by the iOS?
Well, I think the magic of it is the more devices that somebody owns within an ecosystem and the more services I use, the better the services get for me. They have more context about who I am, what I like to buy, what time I like to go to bed, what temperature I like my home, and then the services continue to get better.
So they need to start rolling out some more hardware, do you think, to be able to service all those parts of your life?
So it's not that they have to own the hardware, but to the extent that they have the data, access to the data, can learn about me and provide better services to me through their ecosystem, that works as well. They don't have to own all the touch points in the ecosystem.
But integrate with them.
Yes.
And what about, we just had Tim Cook saying they're always looking at acquisitions, companies of any size. If we did see, say, repatriation happen, money coming back to Apple from overseas, are you expecting it more to go to the shareholder, or what sort of companies could they be eyeing up?
So in this space, right, where we are today is we put a lot of burden on the consumer. So if I want to use a phone, use my TV, you put all of the hard work on me, go find the app, dig in, do whatever I want to do. What has to happen 3 to 4 years from now is technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning need to understand better who I am, anticipate what I need, and push that out proactively to me. So I would expect to see at least some kinds of acquisitions in that space of making experiences better for me through some kind of, you know, broadly under the umbrella of cognitive computing or artificial intelligence.
So maybe some AI play. I think what's interesting is the bit also in the services side has been Apple Pay, and perhaps how I'm surprised how little I can actually use it over here, and particularly where I was working before in Berlin, it's almost impossible. But we heard from Tim Cook on the call talking pretty bullishly about their integration of Apple Pay. Have a listen.
Nearly 2 million small businesses are accepting invoice payments with Apple Pay through Intuit, QuickBooks Online, FreshBooks, and other billing partners. And beginning this quarter, Comcast customers can pay their monthly bill in a single touch with Apple Pay.
This is a much bigger opportunity?
Yeah, it's a huge opportunity. Already in the U.S. today, we see 11% of consumers using Apple Pay, and then when they use Apple Pay, they use it all the time, like every time they can, at least a third of the time, and for the most part, they try to use it as much as they can. And even if we look at the 89% not using it today, about a third of them are interested.
I'm
so
amazed.
A lot of upside. It's
I'm amazed
so easy.
I can't use it on the bus here. Like, it's so easy when I'm back in London to be able to use an Apple Pay anytime. We need the infrastructure to keep up.
Matter of time.
What aren't we talking about on the call at the moment? Is there any area that you were left wanting more information on, or any areas that you want to see yet more growth that you didn't see this time around?
So as we look forward, right, as the evolution of digital experiences, we're moving from a point of standalone apps to third-party platforms to this thing that we call the virtual assistant, like the Google Home or the Amazon Echo device. And in order for Apple to compete well there, they're going to have to know a lot more about my day-to-day life, my calendar, what I do, where I'm going, who my friends are. And so it'll be interesting to see if that's one of the opportunities they embrace as we go forward.
And we'll get you on to talk about it when they do. Thank you so much, Julie. It's
You're welcome.
been wonderful you sticking around for so long. Julie Osk, Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, with all things on Apple. Now, to a deal we're following. Daimler has struck an agreement with Uber to include the German company's self-driving vehicles on its ride-hailing network in coming years. Now, while there are a few specifics on the deal, details could change in the coming years, depending on how the self-driving market evolves. Daimler has been aggressive when it comes to developing self-driving technology of its own, and this partnership could put the car maker, maker of Mercedes-Benz, in a strong position to monetize self-driving cars when the technology is ready. Still to come, meet the billionaire entrepreneur who's planning literal moonshot as soon as this year. We're focused on the business of a lunar outpost. That's next. And as we head to the break, another check on Apple. We're all over it. The earnings call continues, and Tim Cook mentioning that the new administration in Washington just moments ago. Take a listen. This is Bloomberg.
I am optimistic, given what I'm hearing, that there would likely be some sort of tax reform this year, and it does seem like there's people in both parties that would favor a repatriation as a part of that. So I think that's very good for the country and good for Apple.
In this edition of Out of This World, Moon Express made history last year by becoming the first private company to get government permission to fly beyond Earth's orbit. Well, now it got the money to fund the trip, with $45 million raised so far from the likes of Peter Thiel's Founders Fund and Autodesk. We caught up with the billionaire tech entrepreneur behind the company, co-founder Naveen Jain, and asked him why he's leading a startup to the moon.
We as humans live on this spacecraft which has a single point of failure, and if we were to get hit by an asteroid, the whole humanity will get destroyed, just like dinosaurs did. So my goal is to really someday make humanity a multiplanetary society where we can live on the moon and the Mars and beyond. And the first step really is to live on our nearby continent, 8th continent, and if we can learn to live on the moon, we can obviously expand that to future planets. And its short-term goal is to really able to explore the moon, both for scientific purposes and also from the entrepreneurial perspective. As many people have estimated, there is 16 quadrillion worth of resources on the moon, with platinum-grade materials, rare earth elements, and most importantly, the helium-3 and the water. Helium-3 is the best clean energy fuel that could power this planet for generations to come, and water really is the oil for the space economy that someday could be used both for the rocket fuel and also for the fuel for humans.
So I'm intrigued. When you've been out there raising funds, you've had Peter Thiel's Founders Fund, for example, joining the band. What's the reward? How do you make money? Is it from these materials that you bring back and you can then sell, or is it getting other human beings to the moon?
Well, if you think about it, if I could rephrase John F. Kennedy, it will go something like, we chose to go to the moon not because it's easy, because it's a great business. And what makes it a great business is really the natural resources on the moon, but most importantly, to use the resources on the moon to really create the habitat on the moon and really to be able to live on the moon. So it's not simply a tourism, it's really is to save humanity from some potential disaster. And even if you want to live on the Mars, the best training place really is the moon, because the problems are very similar.
Are you going to have to raise more funds, or with the amounts, the resources you bring back from the moon, will that fuel be able to sustain the growth of the business and be able to bring in profits to then bring the living about on the moon?
Yes, I think that, that we are fully funded to be able to do our first, second, and third mission. And what it really means is that essentially accelerates what we want to do. But to us, landing on the moon is really not just about us. It is really about showing that what a small group and the entrepreneurs are capable of doing. So when we land on the moon, not only we become the first company to ever do so, we become the fourth superpower. And what that really means is that someday the entrepreneurs are going to be the superpowers, not the nation states. That means that some of the biggest problems facing humanity is going to be solved by entrepreneurs, whether that happens to be Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Moon Express.
If you're saying you're going to be a superpower, usually that is given to those who are in some way elected, and you're just going to have that power in and of yourself through creativity.
Well, idea is that, the people among themselves start to become accountable, and we all know that just because someone is elected doesn't mean they really deserve to have a superpower, and I'm not saying a word after that.
Give us a sense of your past, because I'm fascinated. You, of course, grew with the dot-com boom. You had some companies that rose, exploded like supernovas, if we're going to stick with the space theme, and then did lose their value. How do you promise the returns to your investors? How do we know that Moon Express will remain a good investment?
Well, the idea is that in the dot-com boom, it didn't matter what company you invested in. Obviously, you can't control the stock price. So whether you invested in Yahoo or whether you invested in VeriSign or you invested in almost any company, all the company lost value. So I think it's very cyclical. So to some extent, you can't control the stock price, but what really you can do is to build great companies. And my personal belief is when you build great companies, great things happen to you. When you build poor companies, the poor things happen to you. So my goal is to continue to inspire entrepreneurs to do great things and continue to be inspired to do great things, whether it is really making the humanity a multiplanetary society or really creating a healthcare system that can keep everyone healthy for as long as they live.
So sticking with Moon Express, that business that you are now fueling and leading, how big will it become if you do indeed get to land on the moon in 2017? Will this become one of the biggest companies in the world?
Well, the way to look at really is that what is it that we fight over land? On the land, we fight over land, the water, and energy. And all we have to do is look up, and you will see the abundance of land, the abundance of water, and abundance of energy. So really everything that we value on planet Earth is in abundance in space. And there is no doubt that someone is going to create a tremendous amount of opportunity and wealth really in a space economy. So space economy is going to be one of the biggest economy. And the company that's leading it will always be essentially be able to create amazing large enterprise by doing good and doing well.
That was Moon Express chairman and co-founder Naveen Jain. In addition to Apple, well, there's another tech giant reporting earnings that we're watching. Nintendo posted third-quarter earnings that beat estimates thanks to sales over the holidays, plus currency benefits from a weaker yen. Now, investors are paying close attention to where Nintendo stands ahead of the rollout of a new gaming console in March. For more, we're joined by Peter Elstrom, managing editor for Asia Technology for Bloomberg News in Tokyo. Beautiful sunrise behind you. Thank you for joining us, Peter. And first of all, break down these Nintendo numbers for us, because the profit looked good in some measures, but not others, and revenue are perhaps one to look out for.
Exactly. It is a mixed bag when it comes to the numbers. As you mentioned, they beat on the net profit number. They also raised their forecast for net profits for the year. But for the quarter, revenue fell about 21%, which is a sign of some of the weaknesses in the business. They also cut their operating outlook for the business. This raises the stakes for them as they head towards this launch of the Switch game console. Nintendo, of course, has been a traditional console maker for a while. They're now trying to fuse home game playing and mobile game playing together in a way that really nobody has done so far, and it's going to be interesting to see how this Switch is received. The price is seen as a little bit high. It's about $300. They're going to launch it on March 3rd. They said they have very high expectations for it, and they're going to need that business to take off for things to improve for the rest of the year.
Yes, we're just looking at pictures of Mario Run there, and the price point didn't quite work, it would seem, on that particular phone game, because everyone downloaded it, but perhaps not upgrading to pay $10 to get the game in full. And talk to us a little bit about perhaps where they need to make better inroads into mobile, but also the 3DS and where that might fall off.
Sure, yeah. Nintendo is struggling with this switch to mobile. Of course, people play games on mobile phones now like never before, and they're sort of part of the traditional console world. They came out with Super Mario Run, really their first mobile game. It was downloaded a lot, more than 70 million times, but very few people paid the money to be able to play the additional levels. It was only 5% of the customers who downloaded it. So it's a sign that they're able to put these games out there, and they're somewhat popular, but the price point there again was a little bit high for the consumer base. So they're experimenting with mobile. They're going to have some other games that come out later on this year, and we may see them play a bit with the pricing and move to some of the models that other people have used to be more successful in these mobile games.
And Peter, I've got to use your Asian know-how a little bit on the other tech giant right now, because interestingly, we saw FX headwinds hindering Apple, and we saw the yen weakness helping the likes of Nintendo. Apart from the FX hit that we saw to Apple, that in large part sometimes coming from the emerging markets, talk to us about what we saw in terms of China and Asian growth in general.
Sure. Yeah, it's easy to forget Apple has such a high presence in the U.S. It actually is very, very popular in Japan, too. But they're very important markets where Apple has very, very little market share. China is one of those. It used to be such a big driver for growth for Apple, and they've been losing share in that market to domestic competitors in particular. There are a few that have come on very strong. Xiaomi is one of the better known. Lenovo, of course, now is more aggressive in smartphones. But there are a couple of virtual unknowns, Oppo and Vivo, that have really come on strong and taken a bunch of the market share in China. So that market has been tough for them. At the same time, India, which is going to be the fastest growing smartphone market over the next 5 years, is another market where Apple has very, very tiny share. They've been trying to boost their share there. Their price point is quite high for that market. So now they have less than 5% of the market. Last I saw, it was about 2% of the market. They've been trying to get their own retail stores open there, which would help. They're also they're negotiating with the government right now to try to do manufacturing in that market, which would help them bring down the prices a little bit and maybe compete more aggressively for share. But they need to be able to compete in that market if they want to get a slice of the fastest growing smartphone market in the world.
Certainly, interestingly, the CFO saying, look, mainline revenue growth in China is flat. And now Tim Cook saying the rate of growth in China for Apple in the second quarter will be similar to the first quarter. Peter Elstrom, great to get your views across the two tech giants, whether it be Nintendo and indeed Apple, live from Tokyo for us. We thank you. Now, still to come, more takeaways on Apple's record sales quarter as the earnings call continues. This is Bloomberg. In the UK, BT's board members are buying up stock after it suffered a 21% drop. Directors and their relatives bought more than $700,000 worth of shares Monday and Tuesday, providing a vote of confidence in the former telecommunication monopoly. With the stock trading near 3-year lows, the insiders are showing faith in BT's long-term prospects. Meanwhile, Apple shares, they're still higher in after-hours trading. We're up 3.1%. Investors appear encouraged by the record revenue from the iPhone and continued growth in Apple's services business. So where does the company go next? Joining us, Mark Gurman, Bloomberg Technology consumer reporter, who was just reporting on the T-Live blog in the terminal. Loved all of it. And it seemed to me when we spoke to the CFO how much they're really trying to show that there was a move towards the iPhone 7 Plus in particular.
Right, they went out and actually said they were not expecting this sort of demand for the iPhone 7 Plus. A lot of people like it because of the larger screen size, but also because of the unique dual camera feature that lets you zoom in a bit further than the smaller model.
Maybe we always need it for a selfie. What about, you pointed out on the T-Live blog, the fact that we are seeing other products perhaps showing some slowdown there, but perhaps that's not something to be too worried about.
Right, Apple has this other products category, and it came in a little bit at a year-over-year decline, and this includes the Apple TV, the AirPods, the Beats, and also the Apple Watch. Should we be concerned? Not really. A lot of the concern is around the Apple Watch in terms of not being able to really walk into a store and find one. But in fact, they say that the Apple Watch hit all-time unit sales and revenue numbers for this Q1 holiday quarter, so not a ton of concern there. Luca Maestri, the company's CFO, told us that the Apple TV launch at the end of 2015 compared to this end of 2016 holiday quarter really was the discrepancy there, why revenue dropped on the other products category.
And so in the last 30 seconds, kick it on for us. The forecast missed, but it looks like it's FX. All hopes on the iPhone 8?
Well, the iPhone 8, or whatever they end up calling it, the one coming out in the September quarter and probably going to make up the majority of the Q1 for next year. A lot is riding on that. They've been hinting at it since the iPhone 7 came out last year. A lot of people are expecting big changes. We reported it's going to have a new glass curved design with a higher resolution OLED display with more colors. So there's a lot riding on it, and we'll see how it does in about a year from now.
And you'll be there to cover it for us. Mark Gurman, Bloomberg Technology's consumer tech reporter. Fantastic analysis, thank you. Now that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. On Wednesday's show, we'll have an exclusive interview with one of the biggest names in tech. Alexis Ohanian, co-founder of Reddit, will join the program. Be sure to watch that conversation. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.